How you going, brothers? I just had a long talk with my son, and I want to take you up in the tree hut and talk to you about that, because this is a topic that I want to hit on. I said to my son after I finished talking to him, I'm going to talk in the Broadsheet Club about this. We're going to go up in here, and we're going up to the tree hut for a very good reason, because part of what the story is about this tree hut here. The conversation today, actually 2 videos in one day. I must be in a pretty good mood. Got a shitload of things to do, but I'm going to punch this out real quick. I want to talk about... Sorry about that, that's the trapdoor closing, put the phone just here. I want to talk about why being sad is not such a bad thing. We are educated all the time through the stupidity of social media, which constantly portrays lives as being fantastic all the time. And I'm guilty of it too. I post up my fish, I post up my... Actually, I'm not that guilty of it. I post up a lot of real stuff. I post up the tiny little sow that I catch. Everybody go, oh, it's only a fucking small pig, Clay. Yes, that's the reality. I only catch small pigs, or catch something which is not that good, but I'll share it with people. But we don't get that overall. Most of the time, people are posting their wins all the time. Here's the perfect family. Here's my wife and I. They're all smiling around the barbecue. You don't know what's really going on in their world. You don't know how much they're in debt to own that home or that flash Ford, if they own a Ford. Won't start me there. But anyway, point being is that we get a real false picture about people's lives. And of course the biggie here is sadness. Don't be sad, mate. When someone tells me to not be sad, I'll turn around and say to them, why is this upsetting you so much? And they will care about you, mate. I'll say, no, just let me be sad. Sad is not a bad thing. And that's where the story's going to go, to this tree hut. How sadness led me to finish building this tree hut for my daughter. So to tell this story, we've got to go back 8.5, 9 years ago. My daughter Dayla was a 11-year-old girl, and Dad, can you please build me a tree hut? I've always wanted one. And I rented this property. I didn't own this. So to build this here, I first of all had to go and get permission from the landlord, because I was putting 4 big 4x4s in the ground with concrete, embracing them. And we started on building the tree hut, and she was so excited about it. And I was out with my friend Stu, pig hunting one day, going down to the Bale, up on Hope, running down to the Bale, and I fucking slid with my feet out in front of me, and as I slid, I grabbed down Manuka tree, and I ripped back my arm, and I tore the infraspinatus across here, damaged it for good. A third of it torn completely off, and Phil Knight, the surgeon, says, well, you probably need that operated on now. I didn't have the operation because 2 reasons. One, he said he'd have to give me this antipsychotic type drug during the healing process, which I just didn't want to have. And secondly, he said I'd be out of action for about 6 months on this particular one of not being able to use it in a sling. I couldn't afford that time. So I stopped playing music, which was my job at the time, and I created a YouTube channel. And that's how I started doing professional YouTube channel. But that's not where the story's going with this here. That was what was a spin-off of that. What really happened was I couldn't finish building this hut. I couldn't lift this hand, I can now, above my head. And the way that I fixed that, and it still hurts to do that today, but the way I fixed it was I took a piece of Manuka wood and I would walk around the farm and I'd try to lift it up. And eventually that broken muscle knitted back together as best it could. And now I can do that. It still hurts, and it's still nowhere near as strong as this arm here, but it's functioning. However, I always felt like shit that I never finished this hut. I always felt like, fuck, my daughter, Dad, can we finish it? And I come out and I try and do a bit, and I end up using my left arm to get bits up, and I had a pulley system, and eventually the whole wall that I had, this wall here with the phones on, completely fell down, and I gave up. I just gave up. I was like, nah, I can't do this. Instead of reaching out to mates and saying, hey bros, can you help me? Because I was too fucking proud. Too fucking proud. Today I'm not like that. Today my pride is way down there. My ego's been shredded. Today I've got no problem. Hey bro, can you help me? And any number of good bastards like David Vass would come round, Simon would come round, Troy Dando would come round. Any number of good bastards would be around here in a flash to help me build this. Here's where the sad part of the video comes in. And I've just had this conversation with my son, and that's where this video comes about. There I was 2 years ago, to this day probably, sitting in Wakefield Homestead convalescing unit in a wheelchair, blood coming out my dick, blood coming out my ass, suffered terrible infection after the operation for cancer, completely feeling like at the very bottom of my life, feeling like, fuck, don't even want to think about it. I was so fucking low. I mean, so low. I'd lost all the infection after the operation. It stripped me of all the muscle mass. And I was so weak I couldn't even wash myself. I couldn't even lift this arm up or any arm. Couldn't do anything. I was in a wheelchair feeling like crap and sad. Talk about sad. I was redlining the sad meter. If you were talking about sad, I was so fucking sad. I wasn't depressed, like as in clinical depressed. I was just feeling rock bottom. Now here's the thing where it brings back to this tree hut. And in my sadness, I sat there trying to avoid self-pity. I could feel the tears behind my eyes. I wasn't crying, but I could feel them. You know how they're coming up and you've got that lump in your throat. I was in this room. I was looking around thinking, this is my fucking life's gone down to this end. And I may not even survive this. This cancer may take me. It's an advanced prostate cancer. It's spread outside the prostate. I may not even have much time. And I really had to have a fucking hard talk to myself. And I said, Clay, what the fuck are you doing, mate? What the fuck are you doing? Why are you feeling so miserable? You're still alive. You're still here. Why are you beating yourself up? And in the sadness, I began to do something. And I believe that sadness is a thing for us humans. And we've evolved to be sad for a very good reason. And this is why when people say, don't be sad, I say, no, let me be sad right now. Because when you're sad, what do? You reflect, you problem solve, and then you resolve. Well, that's at least what you should do. And if you're not doing that, if you're perpetuating the sadness, then eventually that becomes depression. And that is something that you have got to jump on top of. And there is a difference between clinical depression and sadness. And clinical depression, completely different monster in itself. That's a disease in itself, and that needs addressing in a different way. But sadness, don't perpetuate your sadness. Use it to reflect, problem solve, and resolve. And that's exactly what I did. So my sadness sitting there, I thought about a lot of things that I felt sad about. And one of the things I felt really sad about was the fact I'd never finished this bloody tree hut. So I made a promise to myself, as soon as I can financially afford it, I'm going to pay a builder to finish it. And that's exactly what I did. Well, 2 years from there, I worked my ass off. When I was in hospital, I had my laptop. I had a whole lot of footage from the time I've been on Chathams. I punched out videos. I did as much. I was back pig hunting 3 months later, making hunting videos. And my patronage went up on my Patreon channel. It's gone back down now, but I really worked hard. And I put money aside for a number of things. One was to make a dream come true, to own this bit of land, which is today, which I managed to secure that. And the other one was to build this, and I employed Dan Pigman, Dan Smith, to build this, and he finished it off. Well, not quite, but it's here, and my daughter now sleeps in it. So there we have a thing where I was sad, and I problem solved, and I resolved, and today, this here, my daughter slept in it last week, she loves it, and that's where I use sadness to motivate myself to problem solve and fix. And we have this today, and I'm so fucking happy that I finished this for my daughter. A little bit too late, but at least I don't go to the grave knowing I never built my daughter's tree hut. So next time you are sad, use it for just that. Be still, problem solve, think about it, reflect, and resolve the problem. Use it to power yourself up. I really wanted to share this one with you guys because I've just had this talk with my son, and he's a 21-year-old guy going through his own life. Most of the time he's happy, but it's woman stuff. Father, son, talking about his girlfriend. Not his girlfriend. That was something that happened in his life with a woman and trying to work through it. And I said, son, use this time to reflect, but also don't stay there. Because it was bad enough for me back then, being in a wheelchair with such a shitty state and feeling so bad. That the physical was bad enough without me adding to it. And I made a conscious effort. I'm not going to be like this. Now, the next video I'm going to talk about is going to be about young Sneak, one of my close mates who had it really, really bad. And I'm going to talk about how he's turned himself around. But that's a video for another day. Go steady, and we'll see you in the next video. See you later.